In this video, we will be looking at the quadratic formula. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to solve quadratic equations algebraically using the quadratic formula. So let's review some vocabulary. A quadratic equation is an equation that can be written in the standard form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. We've seen this form throughout this unit, so we're going to need our quadratic equations to be written in that format before we can solve through this method. Okay, we've used this to factor and then solve. In our previous lesson, we looked at factoring and solving, but sometimes we can't factor, and even when we can, a helpful tool to be able to solve is using the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula is just that. It's a formula for you to use that can be used to solve a quadratic equation. Any quadratic equation can be solved this way. The quadratic formula is right here. X is equal to, notice it says x equals, our x meaning our solution, so it's x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. If you notice, I highlighted that b squared minus 4ac. We're going to use that first and then plug into the rest of our formula. Okay, because it's a little bit easier to break it down like that. So let's take a look at an example that will use our quadratic formula. So notice here we have our quadratic formula up here at the top. So we are going to use our quadratic formula here. So first thing we're going to do, if you notice it says A, B, and C in the formula, and we want to be in standard form. So here, it almost looks like I'm in standard form. I have 3x squared minus 5x equals 2. When I'm solving, I always want to be equal to 0. So I'm going to take this 2 and I'm going to subtract it from both sides. So now I have 3x squared minus 5x minus 2 equals 0. Notice they are not like terms. So I'm going to write them both. Now I'm going to identify my A, my B, and my C. So here, my A number is 3, my B number is negative 5, and my C is negative 2. Okay, and now I'm going to plug in to the formula. But remember, we talked about that I'm just going to do a piece of it. I'm going to do the piece that's underneath that radical. So I'm going to find out what b squared minus 4ac is first. So I'm going to substitute in b squared. So my b is negative 5. So I'm going to do negative 5 squared minus 4. It's always 4 there. A, which is 3, and C, which is negative 2. And you can just go ahead and type that right into your calculator. So I can have parentheses, negative 5 squared minus 4 times 3 times negative 2. Okay, and then I hit enter and I get 49. So that piece is going to be 49. What goes under the radical here is going to be 49. So now I'm going to do the rest of the equation. I have negative b, so I have negative. My b is negative 5. So this can get tricky sometimes. Negative and another negative. Plus or minus the square root of 49. All over 2 times a. So I have 2 times my a is 3. Okay. Is equal to, now I have a negative times a negative 5, so I have positive 5 plus or minus the square root of 49 is going to be 7 all over 6. Now notice here I have this plus or minus here. This means that I'm going to have two answers. I'm going to have an answer with the plus and I'm going to have an answer with a minus. So over here, I'm going to do 5 plus 7 over 6. And down here, I'm going to do 5 minus 7 over 6. And you can use your calculator. You can use the alpha y equals on your calculator. Alpha y equals 5 plus 7 divided by 6 will give me 2. And then we have 5 minus 7 over 6 will give me negative 1/3. So these are my two solutions. So I'm going to write them as x equals 2 and x equals negative 1/3. These are my two solutions, roots, x-intercepts, zeros. We have multiple words to call them by, but those are my solutions. Let's take a look at one more example. Okay, so again, we're going to solve each quadratic equation using the quadratic formula. And again, for this one, I see I have my I have an n instead of x. It means the same thing. an squared plus 12n equals negative 9. I want it to be equal to 0, so I'm going to add 9 to both sides. And now I've got 4n squared plus 12n plus 9. Again, I'm going to identify a, b, and c. So here I have 4 is my A, 12 is my B, and 9 is my C. And now I'm going to find that piece that was under the square root first. B squared minus 4AC. So my B is 12. I'm going to have 12 squared minus 4 times my A, which is 4, and my C, which is 9. So now I'm going to type that into my calculator. So I have parentheses 12 squared minus 4 times my A, which is 4, and my C, which is 9. Close my parentheses, and I get 0. So that is equal to 0. Now I'm going to use the rest of my equation. So I have a negative, so x equals a negative. Instead of b, I'm going to put my b term, which is 12, plus or minus the square root of 0 all over 2 times my a, which is 4. Okay. Now I'm going to simplify. Negative 12. If I add 0 or subtract 0, I'm going to get the same thing, but I'll go ahead and write it. Negative 12 plus or minus 0 over 2 times 4 is 8. So now here, again, plus or minus, I'll write it out, but we'll notice something here. So I'm going to do plus and minus. 12 plus 0 over 8. 12 minus 0 over 8. Well, 12 plus 0 is just 12. Same thing here. Let's see if we can simplify those fractions a little bit, though. So if I go alpha y equals 12 over 8 will give me 3 over 2. 3 over 2 and 3 over 2. Here we only have one solution. X is equal to 3 over 2. And that can happen. You can have two solutions, one solution, and you can have no solution sometimes. Okay? So that's getting us started with quadratic formula. We're going to do that last example on your notes together in class, so make sure you come and bring your notes to class, and we will continue to practice together.